This is Soul of the South News.
This disease can be contained. It will be defeated. Progress is possible, but we're going to have to stay vigilant, and we've got to make sure that we're working together.
During a press conference outside the White House today, President Barack Obama said America's Ebola response must not be based on fear. Good evening and welcome to the SSN Evening News. I'm Vicki Newton. In recent days, federal health care officials have criticized states that have implemented mandatory Ebola quarantines. President Obama said U.S. health policies should not discourage medical workers from traveling overseas to help with the crisis.
Based on the conversations that I had today with them, they're starting to see some progress in Liberia, and the infrastructure is beginning to get built out. That's thanks to the incredible work and dedication of folks from the United States who are leading the way in helping Liberia, Guinea, and Sierra Leone.
President Obama spoke not long after doctors gave the all clear to the second Dallas nurse diagnosed with Ebola. Amber Vinson is now free of the Ebola virus and headed home. As Polo Sandoval reports, researchers are working to determine when this recent Ebola outbreak began.
First and foremost, I want to thank God.
A new Ebola success story. Nurse Amber Vinson is heading home to Texas.
As a nurse, and now as someone who has experienced what it's like to be cared for through a life-threatening illness, I am so appreciative and grateful for your exceptional skill, warmth, and care.
The 29-year-old was the second Dallas nurse to get the virus after treating the only patient in the U.S. to die of the disease. Her colleague, Nina Pham, was declared free of the virus last week. Vincent's case could provide hope for U.S. health authorities working to prevent another case. At least half a dozen states have their own rules that go beyond new CDC recommendations. Among them, New Jersey, the state where nurse Casey Hickox was forced into a strict 21-day quarantine. She was eventually allowed to finish out that isolation term in her own home state of Maine. Back at the federal level, the president is also focusing on attacking the virus at the source.
We continue to provide the support of health workers who are going overseas to deal with the disease where it really has been raging.
Those efforts come as researchers discover who may be patient zero, the first person to contract Ebola in the current outbreak. The New England Journal of Medicine reports a 2-year-old toddler became infected in a rainforest village in southern Guinea nearly a year ago. He died last December. So did much of his family. Reporting in Washington, I'm Polo Sandoval.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has issued new guidelines for treating a person who has possibly been exposed to Ebola. Poppy Harlow explains.
The CDC has come out with new guidelines it says will help protect America from the spread of Ebola. The changes coming as nurse Casey Hickox, who tested negative for Ebola, is released from her controversial 21-day quarantine, a mandate that allowed New Jersey health officials to isolate her in this tent for 3 days after treating patients in West Africa with the group Doctors Without Borders.
Quarantine of a healthy aid worker who presents no symptom does not present a danger to the society.
Under the new guidelines, the CDC outlines 4 main risk levels. High risk for those with direct exposure to infected fluids of an Ebola patient. Some risk for those living with or within 3 feet of a patient without wearing protective gear. The third is a low but non-zero risk, meaning anyone traveling from a country with widespread Ebola. The fourth category includes people with no identified risk, but could have had exposure to a person with Ebola before the person was showing symptoms or who traveled to West Africa more than 21 days ago. The CDC believes the changes will better determine when individuals should be routed to care. Health officials are holding a 5-year-old boy for additional testing after an initial test for Ebola came back negative. He is being monitored at Manhattan's Bellevue Hospital in New York City, where New York Dr. Craig Spencer, who contracted the virus in Guinea, is being treated.
We did the cautious thing and brought the child in under the full protocol.
Meanwhile, ICU patients at Bellevue have been transferred to NYU Langone Medical Center. According to Bellevue, there were not enough nurses on staff to handle both ICU patients and treat Ebola.
Turning now to our 2014 election coverage. 1 week before the midterm election, voters are angry, and political analysts say that is a bad sign for Democrats. According to a new CNN poll, 7 out of 10 Americans are angry with the direction of the country. That feeling could be a motivator for Republicans to turn out in large numbers. Democrats are battling to retain control of the Senate. There are currently 55 Democratic senators, 45 Republicans. 3 Democratic incumbents are in hotly contested races in the South: Louisiana, North Carolina, and Arkansas. New Jersey Senator Cory Booker started campaigning several months ago for Mark Pryor, the U.S. Senator from Arkansas.
Arkansas is going to be the state, I think, that could be the hinge of the country, because the Senate right now is in the balance in this election, and the Democrats could potentially lose the Senate. And I think that this could be the state that turns one way or the other. And so for me, there's a lot of urgency in that. The other thing is, look, Mark Pryor is one of those great voices in the Senate that I think that's worthy of preserving.
There's already considerable talk about the 2016 presidential race, and it's looking more likely than ever that former Florida Governor Jeb Bush will run for president. His son, George P. Bush, told ABC News that his dad is giving some serious thought to a presidential run.
Is your dad going to run for president?
I think he's still assessing it.
Do you think it's behind him 100%?
The family will be behind him 100% if he decides to do it.
Right now, the GOP doesn't have a true front runner for 2016. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is likely the Democratic candidate. Why the nation's largest retailer is apologizing for one of its Halloween costumes. That's next on the SSN Evening News.
This is SSN Evening News. This is SSN Evening News.
Topping our news digest, take a look at this. An unmanned rocket exploded earlier this evening, just seconds after launching from Wallops Island, Virginia. There was no indicated loss of life, but there was significant property damage. Mission Control trying to assess exactly what went wrong. This unmanned rocket was on a mission to deliver supplies to the International Space Station. New details about last week's deadly shooting at a Seattle area high school. Police say Jalen Freiberg used a text message to lure his victims to the same cafeteria table where he opened fire. A law enforcement official says Freiberg also sent a selfie to an ex-girlfriend that showed him holding a gun. This was shortly before the incident. Authorities say he shot 5 people before he took his own life. 2 have died and 3 remain hospitalized. Classes at Maryville High School are canceled this week. The school superintendent says the community needs time to grieve.
We're grieving. This is a tragedy that kids shouldn't have to go through. And so we've pulled the high school kids together from Marysville Pilchuck, beginning to support them with grief counseling and drop-in centers, and then school will be open again on Monday.
The Seattle Times reports investigators are working to determine how Freiberg obtained the gun that he used in those shootings. The gunman and his cousins are members of the Tulalip tribe. That's a community that, of course, is now reeling with grief and disbelief. Gary Tuckman has more.
About an hour north of Seattle, a bald eagle overlooks the picturesque Tulalip Indian Reservation. It is the home of 2 boys now fighting for their lives. 2 of the 5 victims of America's most recent school gun violence. It is also the home of the shooter. Paula Sataikum lives on the reservation.
How are you related to the shooter?
It's my cousin.
And Nate Hatch, one of the 14-year-olds wounded, you're related to him too?
It's my nephew.
And Andrew Freiberg, one of the 15-year-olds wounded, you're related to him also?
It's my cousin.
There are thousands of people in the Tulalip tribe, but it's an extremely tight-knit community, and many families are related to each other. In fact, many here knew all 3 teenage cousins well.
They hung out together, they played basketball together, cultural stuff together.
Tribal members say respecting each other, particularly one's elders, is one of the most important concepts on the reservation. Paula's 26-year-old son is Brandon Hatch.
It's very important. It's one of the things I live by.
How do you deal with this emotionally right now?
It's just more of a confusion than anything. Really want to know the main purpose of what led up to it than everything, like why. I don't know. can't really feel anything else until I know that first.
Much of life here in the Tulalip Reservation is similar to the way it's been for generations. Here in the Tulalip Bay, fishermen eat and sell what they catch. The same routine their parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents had. Hunting is an important part of the culture too, then and now. Also, traditional totem poles remain part of the culture at many homes.
My dad has got it restored, redone more than once, so it looks good.
The Tulalips have dealt with a lot of adversity over the years, like many Native American tribes. But what they deal with now is unprecedented for them.
Sometimes I just wish that I could wake up and it was just a nightmare, you know, just go away. But it's something that we got to go through. And Heavenly Father never said it was going to be easy. He only said it'd be worth it.
Gary Tuckman, CNN, Tulalip, Washington.
More than 6 months after the ferry disaster in South Korea, a victim's body has been discovered inside the sunken vessel. Authorities say the body was found on the 4th floor of the ferry, but it has not yet been recovered. More than 290 people died when that ferry sank back in April. 9 people are still missing. Last night on the SSN Evening News, as you may recall, we reported that the captain of that ferry could face the death penalty if convicted on murder charges. Some shops in Harlem are posting notices warning customers not to wear hoodies or masks. 3 businesses are warning clients to not enter with a hoodie or mask. If so, according to these businesses, you are now trespassing. The new signs are creating a buzz in the neighborhood where some of the residents find them offensive and a form of racial profiling. The creator of these signs says they aren't meant to be racially offensive, as criminals can be, quote, black, white, brown, yellow, blue, or green. A 2,000-degree river of molten rock is inching its way toward the Hawaiian village of Pula. With each passing hour, that lava flow is getting closer to destroying homes, and so residents have been warned, shelters have opened. Martin Savage takes a look from the air.
We're just a couple of 100 feet above the outskirts of the edge of Pahoa. Let me show you a breakout here, as they call it. It's really the lava where it's coming to the surface, and you can see that flame and vegetation down there. What most people don't realize, perhaps, is that the lava is actually doing most of its moving underground. In other words, it's not this red-hot sea that's sort of oozing across the surface. It is more something that is insidious, almost, running underneath the ground. But take a look at this. This is just an incredible view. It almost looks like water, the way it undulates, the way it's just the surface of it here. But that is, or was, at one point, liquid stone. And you can see how it's transforming the landscape. And I should point out, we're heading right now up to the northeast. In other words, we're heading directly towards Pahoa, following the lava trail here. It has a kind of a look of a wildfire, kind of like an area that may have been burned through, but it's vastly different than that. You can see on the edges how the vegetation is still smoldering. What we want to do is Jeremy's going to fly us now to the farthest end to show you just how close this has come to the town here of about 950 people. The weird thing about this natural disaster is the fact that it's so slowly happening. It's still devastating. The impact is still going to perhaps destroy the town, but it's a disaster that comes in inches rather than something that strikes in the blink of an eye. All right, we're coming up over here, and what we're approaching is the leading edge of the lava as it starts to move into town. Let me show you something down here. We're going to come up and we're going to show it to you on the other side of the helicopter. It's a cemetery, and you can actually see how the lava has burned into the tombstones. It's an old cemetery here, but the lava has actually already pushed through and has now gone beyond. This is probably the most critical day, the day the lava is likely to get into town.
Walmart is apologizing for calling plus-size Halloween costumes fat girl costumes on its website. Someone spotted the faux pas and alerted the blog Jezebel. The internet exploded. Twitter users took the retail giant to task. Walmart removed the section and sent out multiple apology tweets saying, "This never should have been on our site. It is unacceptable and we apologize." We quickly removed it. The Statue of Liberty turns 128 years old today. The icon officially made its debut in New York Harbor on October 28, 1886, and it's recognized as a universal symbol of freedom and democracy. It was designated as a national monument back in 1924. Coming up next on the SSN Evening News, militants being held by Kurdish fighters reveal never-before-heard details about their missions and subsequent captures.
You're watching SSN Evening News. You're watching SSN Evening News.
Welcome back to the SSN Evening News. A chilling exchange between ISIS militants being held by Kurdish fighters in northern Syria. They tell CNN's senior international correspondent Ivan Watson what they think would happen to him if the tables were turned and he had been captured by ISIS.
We're in a prison run by the Kurdish militants here in northern Syria, and we're being introduced to prisoners that the Kurds tell us were members of ISIS.
The prisoners are brought in blindfolded, and we quickly begin to wonder whether they're being forced to speak to us. During our visit here, the guards, who ask not to be shown, do not allow us to see the cells where the prisoners are being held. This man trembles with fear as a prison guard removes his blindfold. I introduce myself as an American journalist, and he begins to relax a little.
Marhaba, assalamu alaikum.
He tells me he's a Syrian named Suleiman. He confesses to being part of an ISIS cell that planted and detonated a remote-controlled car bomb outside a Kurdish base, and says he received around $3,600 US for completing the job.
What is the idea that ISIS is fighting for?
They said they were fighting for Islam and justice. They were lying to us. They took advantage of our minds and our poverty.
One of the prisoners the guards bring out is barely a man.
Your name is Karim. How old are you?
I am 19 years old.
But Karim tells me he fought alongside ISIS all across Syria for more than a year.
Where were you injured?
And he has the battle scars to prove it.
They gave us drugs, hallucinogenic pills that would make you go to battle not caring if you live or die.
Before he's captured by the Kurds, Karim claims he saw ISIS behead many of its prisoners.
Why does ISIS cut people's heads off?
Whenever ISIS goes into an area, the eyes of ISIS, the people there who don't adhere to their Islamic law, are apostates. Everything has to follow ISIS's way. Even women who don't cover their faces. Women would also get their heads chopped off.
The final prisoner is Jabir, a former school teacher and father of two who also confesses to a car bombing.
What would have happened to me if when you were with ISIS, if you guys had found me, an American journalist?
With ISIS, your fate would be death, and there are different kinds of death. They would torture you for sure. They might decapitate you or cut off your hands. They will not simply shoot a bullet in your head.
It's impossible for CNN to confirm whether anything the prisoners tell us was true or whether these men were coached by their captors. The Kurdish prison guards say if set free, every one of these men would likely go back and rejoin ISIS. Ivan Watson, CNN, in Kurdish-controlled northern Syria.
Today, the United Nations General Assembly voted for the 23rd year in a row to condemn the U.S. embargo on Cuba. The U.S. government defends the sanctions as necessary to force Havana to allow more freedoms for Cubans. But an increasing number of voices, including recent New York Times editorials, have called for a lifting of the embargo. They argue that Cuban government reforms are slowly changing how Cubans live. A look now at the impact those reforms are having on many Cubans.
A farmer clears land leased to him by the government. Workers manage their auto repair shop. People line up to get email service on their phones. All signs of change in Cuba. Following Fidel Castro's revolution, nearly every Cuban became an employee of the state. Their financial well-being was tied to how well or poorly the Cuban government ran the economy. Only recently has the government begun to give up some of that control. Ricardo Lasso Hernandez has worked the land at his small family farm for all his life, but had little to show for it. The Cuban government told farmers what to plant and set the prices. Following decades of centralized planning, production plummeted. In 2012, the government changed laws to take over larger tracts of unused weed-covered land and turn them over to farmers like Lasso. Now he has about 20 hectares to farm, 3 times as much land as before. This unused land has helped my family a lot, he says. We weren't doing well financially. We had a small farm, and each day after work, then I had to drive a taxi. Lasso is obligated to sell to the government about half the produce he grows. The rest he can sell on the open market at his prices. With those earnings, he provides for his family now and hires extra workers. This auto repair shop lost money when it was under state control. Business decisions were made by government bureaucrats. Low wages meant employees didn't work particularly hard or were forced to steal from the shop. But last year, the government turned the shop into a cooperative where workers would share in profits if they turned things around, or lose their jobs if they couldn't become more efficient. At first, we didn't know how it would work, he says, because it meant we were in charge of our resources and allocating them. We were afraid, but we took on the challenge and have seen very big changes. Even after paying taxes to the government, the 50 workers at this cooperative have seen their salaries increase 4 times over, or about 5 times the salary of the highest paid doctors in Cuba. In Cuba, there's a line for just about everything. But right now, there's no lines longer than the ones to sign up for email service on mobile phones. People wait for hours, sometimes a whole day. All that's available for the moment is access to restricted and probably monitored email accounts via Cuban government provider. There's no mobile internet, but still, for many Cubans, this is their first step towards the information age. In the world we live, being offline holds us back, he says. It puts us in last place in terms of competitiveness. Cuban officials acknowledge that the reforms are happening slower than many people here would like. They say Cuba's ailing economy might never fully rebound until the U.S. trade embargo is lifted. But the smallest openings, more land to farm, a higher paycheck, email access, can have lasting repercussions on an island that has for so long resisted change. Patrick Ottman, CNN, Havana, Cuba.
The federal government wants to get the word out tonight about the warehouses it owns, stocked with desks, computers, even helicopters. Nonprofits, small businesses, and even cities can apply to purchase goods from the federal government for a very small fee. It's called the Federal Surplus Property Warehouse, and there's one in each of the 50 states.
There is an application process involved, and with that process, they have to be qualified through the SBA if it is a small business. However, if it's a not-for-profit organization or public agency, such as a city or town, we have a basic application process. And once we dot our I's and cross our T's, they become eligible participants.
One more note, Arthur Wood says the public often thinks the warehouses are only filled with junk, but he says much of the property is gently used and then some of it is still in the box new. Up next on the SSN Evening News, we take you to Southern Illinois where a former NFL star has taken an unusual course. Former NFL star Eddie Moss is a member of a team of African-American men who own a golf course in Southern Illinois. They are ready to welcome all fans of the game to their newly redesigned course. Take a look at it.
It's really strange, you know, Ron and I, we worked at United Parcel Service together. for several years. I worked there for 26, and I do believe Ron, he can tell you, I might be right, I think he had 30 plus years there and with the United Parcel Service. So after we retired, we became members here at this golf course, and we played and played and played. And the previous owner that had it before us, he wanted to get out of business because he was going to do something else. And the opportunity came to us, and we decided to sit down. We sat down and talked about it, and we started a partnership, and we've been rolling ever since January 1st of 2012.
We're very happy we got into it. This golf course has always been personal to us. As Eddie said, we were members out here, and we probably played out here since the 90s. This is one of the golf courses when we learned to play golf. We visited it all the time. So having the opportunity to take it over, run it, and turn it around and make it one of the premier courses in the area, we jumped on the opportunity to do that.
The other side of it is, too, we're getting involved with the community, and we're trying to reconnect with East St. Louis, and that's what it's all about. I think we had lost that connection somewhere down the line, but now we're out reconnecting with Mayor Parks and some of the other elected officials here in East St. Louis. Each Thursday we have what we call Let's Move, part of Michelle Obama's program, trying to get people out to exercise. We're working with St. Louis Health Department and also East St. Louis Health Department, and it's really going well. We're talking about life skills, eating habits, how to eat, how to cook good food, and also teach the kids and anybody else that want to learn how to hold a golf club. So we're working well with them and really getting involved with the community.
We're trying to not only teach African Americans the game of golf, but we want to also introduce them to the industry. That is our goal, is to promote the industry, not just the golf. Our goal is to get up to between 150 and 200 kids out here over the summer, that we can teach them not only life skills, but the game of golf as well, expose them to it. We're very attentive to their needs and come out and enjoy it. You know, we want to not only bring the golf course back to them, but we also are taking on initiatives to bring the state park back to the community. Many of our communities don't use the state park as much as they can or should. And we want to open the park back up to them. We want to see the liveliness back out here again, not only for golf, but for the public as a whole, to come out and visit Grandmarie. Grandmarie is a great place. It's a beautiful park. And I think if the public come, they'll enjoy themselves. We have fishing. They race water. They have water sports out here where they race their cars and
the boats.
And hopefully the boats, the boats. And hopefully they'll come over and get interested in golf.
Throughout the years, this course has survived. And our goal is, as we always say at UPS, once you take over something, you want to leave it better than you found it.
And again, that golf course is in Southern Illinois. Coming up, Veterans Day is November 11th, and Soul of the South wants to honor the brave men and women who defend our freedom. How you can pay tribute to your favorite soldier with our Soul of a Warrior campaign when we return.
This is SSN Evening News. This is SSN Evening News.
African Americans have been involved in the United States military from the arrival of the first slaves during the colonial days all the way to the present day. There has not been a war fought by or within the United States in which African Americans did not participate. Every soldier is brave, courageous, and dedicated, but their names and their deeds aren't always known. And so with Veterans Day on November 11th, we want to salute those who defend our nation. We invite you to post a photo, upload a video, and include a story about the soul of a warrior, your favorite warrior, so we can honor them. Go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/Soul of the South Television, or send us a tweet at Soul_South. Our YouTube page is youtube.com/SouloftheSouthTV, and you can send in your photos and your videos until November 10th, and we certainly hope to hear from you. Have you noticed that your hearing isn't as good as it used to be? When the SSN Evening News returns, some warning signs for hearing loss.
You're watching SSN Evening News. You're watching SSN Evening News.
If you're noticing gradual hearing loss as you age, you are not by yourself. The Hearing Loss Association of America estimates that by age 65, 1 out of 3 people in the U.S. has some degree of hearing loss. But as we learn in this report, there are warning signs.
That hearing loss is, for the most part, coming from the inner ear, the part of the ear that converts vibratory energy into nerve impulses. And that accounts for the decline in hearing.
Heredity, aging, and exposure to loud noises are the main factors that experts say contribute to hearing loss over time. So what are some of the clues that your hearing is deteriorating?
You often can hear things, but you don't understand them. Probably the most reliable sign is that your spouse or your children are complaining that you're not responding. Particularly if they're in a different room. So those are the common symptoms.
If you notice any of these symptoms, you should visit your doctor to get a diagnosis and rule out any other possible issues. Some live with hearing difficulties before seeking help or never seek treatment at all, but treatment can improve the quality of your life. Prevention is key for noise-induced hearing loss, and it can help reduce age-related hearing loss.
Noise is the most important preventable cause of hearing loss. And it's a cumulative effect year after year. The use of iPhones, earbuds is really contributing to hearing loss, all of which is preventable.
I'm Christina Muchler reporting.
A Pennsylvania company is recalling several brands of baby wipes due to possible bacterial contamination. New Tech Disposables says it received complaints about rashes, irritation, and fever, and tests showed some of the products contained bacteria. The company says it could be dangerous for people who have weakened immune systems. The wipes were manufactured under several brand names, including Femtex, Fred's, Tender Touch, and Well Beginnings. They were sold to Walgreens, Sam's Clubs, Family Dollar, Fred's, and Diapers.com. New Tech has not yet pinpointed how that bacteria managed to get into the supply. It has stopped shipping baby wipes made at the facility. Filling up your gas tank hasn't been this cheap in years. According to AAA, the average price at the pump is currently $3.04 a gallon, and that's the lowest it's been since December of 2010. The national average has dropped for 32 consecutive days for a total of 30 cents per gallon. 17 states have gas prices below $3 a gallon. Drivers in South Carolina, Tennessee, and Mississippi have the least expensive gas in the country, and Hawaii has the most expensive, followed by Alaska, New York, and California. Costco employees will get to enjoy Thanksgiving at home again this year. Black Friday deals at the warehouse retail chain won't start until Friday. Costco is bucking the trend of retailers who keep opening their doors earlier and earlier on the holidays. A company spokesperson says workers deserve the opportunity to spend Thanksgiving with their families. Many little girls dream of being a ballerina, but it takes discipline to master that art form. When the SSN Evening News returns, meet 2 little girls who are raising the bar. Welcome back. The fantasy for a lot of little girls is to become a ballerina, outfitted in tutus and tights. It can be the stuff that dreams are made of, yet for 2 tiny ballerinas, it's becoming a reality through some hard work.
Lower your heels, demi-plie, stretch your legs, demi-plie.
The rigorous discipline required for a star ballerina begins when the dancer is young. Gideon and Gabriel West are budding ballet dancers. Gideon started her ballet training 4 years ago when she was 3.
Gideon is all princess, all girl, all pink frills, sparkles. And I think Gideon was probably asking me to go to ballet for about a year before she was ever even enrolled.
Heather West says her daughters love ballet, especially Gideon, who has already performed in a professional production.
The stage, the lights, the makeup, the costume, I mean, she was in it. You know, and at the end, she was like, "Mommy, this is the best day of my life."
At the Arkansas Academy of Dance, the director is Rebecca Stahlcup. whose ballet career took her to the top but was derailed by a knee injury. She recognizes talent, even when it's still young.
Gideon for sure is an exception because I think that this child probably has all that it takes to pursue this. Past the college years, if she wanted to be a professional, she's got it in her. Just like Gideon or Gabriel would want to make their...
If she sets her mind to something, she will do it. And she definitely has a lot of stick-to-itness. So that's good. And I think even the discipline that's coming with ballet, with having to do things over and over and over again, I'm seeing that translated into other areas.
The most well-known African-American ballet dancer is Misty Copeland. Copeland's success is inspiring and motivational for African-American involvement in the art. Exposure to ballet and the related expenses are often cited as reasons for a lack of participation.
It's nice, first of all, to have the diversity in the company, in the ballet company, and in the school. And I think it reaches out to so many in showing everybody can do this. Everybody can have this skill. I like to think that we offer to the community as a whole, whether there are financial needs or maybe just the education of dance itself. Maybe children don't know about classical ballet and they don't know enough about classical ballet to the extent that they might think, oh my goodness, I want to do this. So I think there's a need for us as a school, as a company, as well as the rest of the dance community in Arkansas to get out to these schools and these communities and expose children to what dance is and get them excited about it.
When we actually got to the show and I saw the caliber, phenomenal for her to have that experience at 7, but it was not inexpensive. So that's what she loves. I mean, she loves it. And so, you know, we will do what we need to do to foster that dream and that love.
But for Gideon, these are the days for perfecting her skills and preparing to perform. And perhaps she will raise the bar along the way. A recap of today's top stories when the SSN Evening News continues.
This is SSN Evening News. This is SSN Evening News.
14 years ago, a retired deputy sheriff started a program called the OK Program. It's designed to help young, at-risk African-American males between the ages of 12 and 18. The program is in 6 states, and that includes Arkansas, where it has been since 2007, and it is seeing growth. SSN's Corey Isbell spoke with Sergeant Willie Davis to learn more about it.
Yeah, the OK Program it's a law enforcement-based mentoring program for black males between the ages of 12 and 18. It was a program that was started in 1990, actually in California. Retired Sheriff's Deputy Mr. Donald Northcross, who is originally from Arkansas, but lives in California now. Got tired of seeing black boys killing black boys, man, and he come up with a concept of mentoring, you know, the young boys themselves. He retired from his sheriff's job in California and started the program from there, going into schools, recruiting kids, or getting teachers to refer kids to him, and it started that way, man. And right now we have affiliates across the country, different states, Little Rock, Arkansas, Oakland, California, Monroe, Louisiana, Kansas City, Kansas, Omaha, Nebraska. And so those are other affiliates that we have that's across the country that's doing what we do. I've had a tremendous success, you know, with these young men. Currently have about 225 black males enrolled. I may have 70 and that's committed each Saturday to come out, you know, listen to the discussion that we have. It wasn't easy at first because, you know, recruiting black men to mentor black boys, even from a police officer perspective, getting those guys to come in and do the work and stay is a tough job because a lot of guys don't see themselves as doing this kind of work or committed to doing this kind of work. Social work, you know, and that's what we do as police officers, in my opinion. And so it's been tough getting officers committed to doing this kind of work, but the mentors as well. You know, I have some committed men, but I've trained over 100 men since I've been here to get this program going. But we're having some moderate success, and I'm proud that people are beginning to know who we are here in the city. To honestly tell you, this has been a part of what I've been doing since I've been a police officer. I just didn't know I was doing the OK program. Being a public servant, being a lover of people has allowed me to do this job effectively. So I can't think of any particular point. I just realized, you know, when I started embracing these young boys and getting to know not only the boys, but their families, and I was determined then to stick and stay. When you realize that a lot of these young men, they'll have father figures in their homes, and sometimes they have mothers cracked out. And you go to the homes and visit, you see the living conditions, and you know then they really need you to stay in their lives. So I think those home visits are what's crucial to me and make me realize that I need to continue to be in these boys' lives, show them a better way. It doesn't cost anything, it's a free program. All the parents are required to do is fill out the application process, and we'll take it from there. Have one young man I recall vividly, who's still in the police as junior at a local high school here. His dad was murdered about 3 years ago, and we were actually getting ready to go on an end-of-the-year trip when this violence occurred in his family. And I remember talking to his mom on the phone and asking her if she, you know, wanted him to stay or go on the trip. And she was adamant about he should continue to go on the trip with us. And at that time, we actually was going to Atlanta to visit the King Museum and talk about nonviolence. And at that time, I was at a hotel, and I pulled a little kid outside, and I began to talk to him about what had happened to his dad, and I asked him how he felt about it. Then I also asked him what he felt, how he felt about the man that murdered his dad. His response to me was that he just felt like people should get along. He expressed no anger against this man or resentment, even at his age, man, and it really shocked and surprised me. Well, when we returned to Little Rock that following day, he was able to go to a local park who was memorializing his dad, and to talk about that event and experience in Atlanta, and talked about how he wanted people to get along, man. So I remember that real vividly. This kid has maintained a 4.0 grade point average. Yeah, in spite of all of that. You know, there's another kid, his mother was murdered when he was 5. He watched his daddy shoot a man down about 1.5 years ago. So he witnessed violence firsthand, and never met his mom, but saw his dad kill a man and go to prison. But this kid, you know, he has ups and downs, but we stick and stayed with him, and you know, he still struggled some. He ended up going to Youth Challenge, got his GED. Now he's currently getting ready to go, you know, to go to college. You know, so you think about those kinds of stories, and these guys, young men, they have no real reason to be motivated about anything, particularly when you see the element of violence they see on a daily basis. You know, and so it's kind of tough. But when you see guys like that, even if it's 1 or 2, you still think you're making a difference, man. So it matters, yeah. And, I know I get excited when I see and notice the achievement of these young men. I get excited when I get to go to their homes and their mother's proud about what they're doing, and telling their mom that I'm proud to have their son in our program. And so those moments that show up keep me inspired. If I had to sum it up, I would want them to say that I was a father that they never had. I showed them what being a real man was like, you know. I taught them and showed them what respect was. And most importantly, loving themselves. That would be it.
Finally tonight, let's recap our top stories. The second Dallas nurse to be treated for Ebola has been released from the hospital. Doctors say Amber Vinson is now free of the Ebola virus. New information in the Washington State school shooting shows the shooter sent a text message to lure his victims to the same cafeteria table where he opened fire. And baby wipes are under recall tonight. New Tech Disposables recalling the product because of possible bacterial contamination. Those wipes were sold at Walgreens, Sam's Clubs, Family Dollar, and Fred's. That is it for the SSN Evening News. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll look for you tomorrow night. I'm Vicki Newton.